Solving the mystery of a Jane or John Doe case has historically been one of the most challenging tasks for the police. It was more difficult in earlier decades, but with new DNA technology, investigators now have a powerful tool to help identify these individuals. One of these cases was the Ramsey County Jane Doe case, which was finally resolved after 4 decades. Welcome to Mysterious 7. Today we're looking at the Ramsey County Jane Doe case, which was finally solved in 2022 after 45 years. If you haven't subscribed to our channel by now, please consider hitting the subscribe and like buttons. Let's take a deep dive into this mystery without any further ado. St. Paul, Minnesota is a bustling city that's one of the twin cities of Minneapolis. St. Paul is located on the banks of the Mississippi River. It has its share of homicides, robberies, and other violent crimes, just like any other major city would. This high rate of criminal activity is endemic to all urban areas, and St. Paul has, throughout its history, amassed a number of unsolved mysteries. On July 20th, 1977, a decomposed body was discovered floating in the Mississippi River between Childs and Warner Roads in St. Paul. The locals were the first to discover it. They were taken aback by the body, in part because they couldn't tell whether it belonged to a man or a woman. They immediately contacted the Ramsey County Police Department. The officers arrived at the scene and began their investigation. They discovered the fully clothed body of a young woman wearing a striped shirt, jeans, and size 9 shoes. Her face was no longer recognizable due to her time spent in the river. As soon as the body was extracted from the water, it became evident that the identification process would be challenging. The woman's body was too decomposed for many identification techniques, and she had no identification on her. A detailed inspection was required for the examiner to determine the victim's identity. In the meantime, police began to talk with the individuals who found the body in hopes that they had seen or heard something relevant to the case. Unfortunately, they had no useful information. When the body was taken to the medical examiner, it was determined that it belonged to a Caucasian female between the ages of 16 and 30. The examiner stated that the body's likelihood of being on the older end of the spectrum was high based on the body's condition. According to preliminary reports, the victim would have died up to a year before being discovered. Detectives were surprised that the medical examiner was able to find so many details about the body despite such a long post-mortem interval. According to the examiner, the woman had brown or green eyes. There was also some brown hair remaining on the body. Both were unusual for a body that had been decomposing for such a long time. However, after discovering these details, the examiner was able to confirm that the water was extremely cold and had preserved the body for months. Upon further examination of the body, the medical examiner discovered even more shocking details. The woman was found to have multiple abdominal stretch marks. These marks indicate that the woman may have been pregnant at some point in her life. These stretch marks could have been caused by normal growth as well, but in most cases, it suggests that a woman has actually given birth. The medical examiner found additional evidence in the pelvis that indicated this was the case. The woman's teeth were her most identifying feature. The significant chipping on her front teeth would have been obvious to anyone who saw her. In addition, she had numerous dental fillings on her molars that were made of both silver and gold. Her dental chart was very distinctive and was made available for comparison, but the search had not yielded any results. Due to the state of decomposition, fingerprints could not be taken, and DNA testing was not a possibility during the early stages of the investigation. The circumstances surrounding Ramsey Jane Doe's passing remained a mystery. Some sources reported that her cause of death was discovered in the early years, but that the findings were kept secret from the public, while other sources reported that it remained unknown. The Ramsey County Police Department categorically denied all allegations that they were keeping her cause of death secret from the public. They stated that there could be many ways that would lead to someone's body ending up in the Mississippi River. Since there was no information available, it was impossible to speculate what caused her to be found where she was. As a result of the limited resources that were available at the time, The preliminary investigation into Ramsey County Jane Doe was not a particularly in-depth one. Since the investigators did not have access to fingerprints and no usable mortuary photo or composite, they could only make comparisons to missing person reports. The officers did their best to match the Ramsey County Jane Doe with other missing persons reports, but her case did not match any recent or even older reports of missing persons. Despite so much hard work and patience, investigators were left with very little to go on. The case was not closed, but it became cold over time. The Ramsey County Jane Doe case was widely publicized on news channels, but remained unsolved for many years. Over 4 decades later, the case remained unsolved, and with DNA being a new option for unidentified person cases, Ramsey County exhumed several does, including the Jane Doe from 1977. With this new DNA sample, they again compared the Ramsey Jane Doe to missing women from the 1970s. There were initially no matches, and the new DNA sample did not generate any leads. In March of 2021, Bush Hudson of the Ramsey County ME's office contacted the DNA Doe Project and submitted Jane Doe's DNA extract to a series of laboratory processes in order to develop a DNA profile. In May 2021, it was announced that the DNA Doe Project would accept both the 1976 and 1977 Jane Does from Ramsey for genetic genealogy research. With an existing DNA sample, it was simple to upload Ramsey Jane Doe's DNA to the GED match database to find a match with close relatives. The Ramsey Jane Doe was quickly matched to some distant relatives, and the DDP began investigating those connections. Ramsey County had enough money to exhume and collect DNA samples from their does, but not enough to pay for investigative genealogy research. As a result, a fund was established on the DDP website to help in funding the research to determine Ramsey Jane Doe's identity. Ramsey County Jane Doe's best match until November 2021 was 286 centimorgans. Centimorgans are units of measurement for the length of DNA strands. The length of DNA shared by one person with another is expressed in centimorgans and could be used to determine how closely related the person was to someone. A match of 286 centimorgans was about the amount of DNA shared by second cousins. The Ramsey Police Department knew they were close to such a significant match. People were gradually but steadily providing financial support. The police department knew that with proper funding, it shouldn't take long for the DDP to discover Ramsey Doe's true name, and it appeared that the case was nearing completion. Ramsey Jane Doe was given a racial admixture report, which proved that she was Caucasian with some West Asian ancestry. The majority of her ancestors were from northeastern Europe and the Mediterranean. With this new ethnic information, many missing women who were suspected of being Ramsey Jane Doe would be eliminated as possibilities. Not only was the DDP able to provide new techniques to help identify Jane Doe in 2021, but Carl Koppelman, who was the forensic sketch artist, also created a facial reconstruction for her. Carl warned on the Web Sleuth's discussion for this case that he didn't have very good photos of the skull to work from, and that his reconstruction wasn't the most accurate he'd ever made. Apparently, the medical examiner's records no longer contained a very detailed description of the woman. He did mention that the reconstruction's teeth were precise and easily distinguished the unidentified woman. He stated in a Web Sleuth's thread that the chips on her teeth would be visible in any picture of her smiling. Finally, with full funding, the DNA Doe Project's dedicated and skilled volunteer investigative genetic genealogists constantly researched the DNA databases at gedmatch.com and ftdna.com. The team faced numerous challenges from the start. The genealogy involved working with limited and distant matches, including immigrant grandparents from Finland and over 35 Italian connections. In the United States, Finland, and Italy, talented DDP genealogists combine their skills in foreign language research and document investigation. They finally cracked the case in 2022 by thinking outside the box to piece together all of the clues. After 850 hours of research, the team's resourcefulness resulted in the successful identification of a woman named Mary Jensen. Gwen Quapp, the team leader, stated in an interview that the case was difficult due to the distance between matches and recent immigration from Finland and Italy. They were extremely grateful to everyone who submitted their DNA profiles to gedmatch.com. The team felt privileged to be given the opportunity to restore Mary's name after 45 years. The DNA Doe Project was thankful to many organizations and individuals for their assistance in solving this case. Other than the woman's name, the authorities revealed no other information about Mary Jensen, as their investigation is still ongoing. They continue to contact the families and acquaintances of Mary Jensen. The circumstances around Mary Jensen's death are still unknown. People are currently only speculating whether it was a murder or a suicide. However, now that they have a name after 45 years, they're confident that they will, one day, discover the actual cause of Mary Jensen's death. One of the main reasons for the success of identifying Mary Jensen was the help this case got from the people. This was a donation-funded case, and the goal of $3,450 was required for the special lab testing and DNA extraction. It was fully raised with donations from people all around the globe. The Ramsey Police Department was very thankful to the generous donors who contributed to this important project. There are many other cases that need funding, and people from around the world are helping to solve them. What do you think about the investigation of the Mary Jensen Jane Doe case? Do you think we'll ever know her cause of death? You're welcome to share your thoughts in the comments. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to get more stories like this.